GLP-1s like Ozempic and Wegovy are certainly rewriting the rules of weight loss, but there's a missing chapter that Big Pharma rather you not read. In this video, I'll show you what's going on beneath the surface and why following a crowd might set you up for failure down the line. As a clinician, helping people succeed beyond GLP-1s, seeing patterns and pitfalls that most ads or even other providers ignore. We'll dive into the benefits, the hidden traps, and the one thing that you must start building today if you want lasting results. Hi, I'm Dr. Carter with Metabolic Clinic, and we are weight loss experts. We've helped a ton of people lose weight and not keep it off effectively. If you're watching this video, you probably heard of GLP-1s. I will just say that originally they were created for diabetes, and they worked pretty well for that. It was accidentally discovered that these patients were also losing weight, which as in the past was difficult when you had diabetes, and they started investigating. Lo and behold, it works pretty well for weight loss as well. And that does impact your appetite directly, and it also improves your body's response to insulin, which were two big breakthroughs for Wegovy or semaglutide. What makes this work so well? One, it suppresses your appetites very effectively, but also helps with cravings, and those get down-regulated significantly as well. It also will help maintain your blood sugar and your insulin levels we have a more steady blood sugar. Interestingly, it does help with inflammation in the visceral fat stores as well, meaning the fat that is around your organs, which we really don't want a lot of that there, helps with that too. Now, like any medication, there is certainly side effects and risks that you should be aware of. Probably the biggest one, or at least most discussed right now, is around muscle loss. That seems to be more an issue with how effective the medication is, to be honest with you. It is very effective in decreasing your appetite for the vast majority of people. What that means is you can get into trouble with maintaining your muscle. There's a number of studies that have looked at this. The takeaway is that we want to make sure that we are addressing nutrition, particularly the protein, and making sure we're getting adequate protein in our diet. And also training is going to be helpful. And a number of studies have shown us that we can essentially block that from happening even if you are an older individual. Historically, it's been thought that if you're older, it's going to be hard to put on muscle. With training and proper nutrition, you can block this effects even if you're older. Now, because it works so effective for a lot of people, when you decrease your total calorie intake for an extended period, what is going to happen is your body is going to adapt to this, and so you will get a metabolic slowing down. What that means is that your basic metabolic rate is going to be much lower than when you started. So that is something we want to be mindful. And then there's psychological fallout that not a lot of people talk about, but it could make it difficult later to sense true hunger or fullness later, particularly when you're off the medication. And that is something that we want to be mindful of, other than the typical side effects that any medication can cause, like a headache, etc. What the real problem here is the exit strategy is not really discussed. Pharma companies are going to focus specifically on the medication and not life after stopping the medication. So if we're not proactive about our approach, weight gain is common and could be rapid. Almost every weight loss study that you look at, you'll see what's called a J-shaped curve, meaning people do good at the beginning and they slowly lose weight. Once they start the medication, we will see it slowly come back up. Generally, a year later, people have regained 2/3 of all the weight they have lost. Again, this is what we see when there's no plan for after. I just mentioned maintaining your muscle is important. So one of the biggest things is that muscle is metabolically active, and if we don't preserve it, that is going to contribute to our metabolism going down. That's just one thing that we're worried about. The other is we don't want to lose muscle. We're naturally going to lose muscle as we get older, and that puts us at risk for falls and other issues that we want to avoid. What can we do to preserve our muscle while we're also losing weight? So one is strength training, and we want to just make it super simple. We want to focus on compound movements. I think deadlifts, squats, rows, presses 2 to 3 times a week, and we want to do something called progressive overload. And all that means is that we want to add weight and reps that the difficulty maintains the same. As you're doing this, your body is adapting. It should be getting stronger. We want to keep that going. Either want to increase the weight or the number of reps. We want to be towards near failure. In general, if you're untrained, I recommend people they do 4 sets per body part to start. It's going to work great for if you're aiming for 6 to 8 really daily hard sets per muscle group per week. On the nutrition side, we really want to make sure we have enough protein. You can go as low as 0.8 grams per pound of body weight up to a gram. That is going to be enough for the vast majority of people. And we really, ideally, you want to split the protein throughout the day, and part of that reason is the muscle creation. There's a 2 to 3 hour window where you create muscle. Your body is favoring muscle production after ingestion, where adding more protein at that point is not going to increase how much muscle you make. Some people do have issues when they're on GLP-1 getting in enough protein. So there are a couple strategies around that. So one is you can use shakes to get your protein in. You can use collagen or even amino acid supplements like essential amino acids. Those are going to help. Another thing you could really look at too is the dose. We do not want zero hunger. So if you're having difficulty with eating enough, then that might not be the right dose for you. What else can we do? This is going to help us address the slowed metabolism. We want to train our body to be able to handle different types of sources. What you can do is practice cycling between fed and fasted states strategically. So what that would mean is eating a normal day and then having a window or a day where you're doing intermittent fasting 2 to 3 days per week. So one way you might structure that is on days when you're doing those weights we just mentioned or muscle training, that those are the days you just prioritize protein, and then also making sure we get enough carbohydrates on those days. On the lighter days or the non-training days, you would stick to a lower carb, higher fat meal. And maybe that's the day you do intermittent fasting. Another thing we can pay attention to is what's called NEAT, is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And all that means is all the stuff you do that is not exercise when you're awake. Sometimes people, when they're on a weight loss journey, they will unintentionally decrease that number and wonder why they have plateaued or maybe even gaining weight. And this is one of the things you look at, is like maybe you've decreased that unintentionally. One thing you might consider is just counting steps or looking at your step counts to make sure you're maintaining that, and shoot for something between 8,000 and 10,000 steps. Just gauge it to your life and kind of what you normally would do though. And then another thing that helps with our metabolism is refeed. So having a higher calorie hard carb, and so this would be something you do every few weeks. You can do once a week, depends, you just have to listen to your body, but this will also help stimulate your metabolism and keep it up. Well, not often said, but your brain is going to need some help as well after the GLP-1, so not just your body. There's a couple things to consider. One is just being aware of your hunger. Pause before you eat and say, am I physically hungry? Like, am I really hungry? Or is this something to do with emotions? So that's one thing. After you skate, you can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on after you eaten, where are you at? Are you 10? Like 10 would be uncomfortably full, and 8 would be I'm pretty full, but I could eat more if I wanted to. So we want to be around 7 or 8 with our brain and behavior in mind. We want to also look at default behaviors that we do when we're stressed. So if we're stressed, do we grab a cookie? Do we have a drink? Do we eat potato chips or whatever? Consider doing something else. Consider taking a walk, having a glass of water, stretch, calling somebody, instead of first just getting something to eat or drink. Another thing that's helpful is mindful eating. No screens while you're eating. The studies have shown that people who are on their phone or watching TV, they tend to eat a little more because they're not necessarily paying attention to how much they're eating. And if you really want to take this to the next level, a few other things to consider is portion control. A good portion is really using your hand. Serving of protein could be your hand, your thumb could be a serving of fat. Non-starchy vegetables, I say pretty much eat half the plate or as much as you want. It's going to be hard to overeat that. Being okay with being hungry sometimes is, I know it can feel like you're dying, but you're not. So it's okay to be hungry for a little bit, especially when you come off the medication, when your appetite signals are somewhat off. In our program, we do have a metabolic reset model where we transition people off a GLP-1, and the upcoming videos will definitely touch on some of those strategies as well. If you're on the GLP-1 or you're thinking about it, your success depends on what you do right now. Hit subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. I'll walk through a real case on someone lost 40 pounds and they were able to reverse their prediabetes, and they walked away from the medication with confidence.